The original Fear is such a fun game. I could play this for hours. I love it. It's amazing. It's a classic, and you should play it. Not only is it a scary game, but it's just a perfect shooter. The AI is really well done because they were programmed in like squads, essentially, and they were put in tight, confined areas, so they didn't really have to do a whole lot of pathfinding. People will argue all day long whether the AI is good or if it's just because of level design. It doesn't really matter because regardless, it's such an enjoyable experience. Fear 2 came out, and, you know, I like Fear 2. It got some hate, but, you know, it's still a good game. Then we get Fear 3. Fear 3 is awful. Originally, I wanted to talk about Fear 3 as itself, as a standalone game, but man, when the game constantly reminds you that this is a Fear game, you realize that it's so garbage. So, I'm going to have to compare it to the original 2. And so if you haven't played the original 2, you may be a little confused or may not understand what I'm talking about, but hopefully I'm able to explain it. I'm Elijah Blackwell, CD-ROM Fossil, and this is a review of Fear 3. So when Fear 3 starts, you get this opening cutscene, and things are already different. This is a mood shift. You already recognize that this is going to be very different because, well, the first 2 games didn't have pre-rendered cutscenes for the most part. You experienced everything from the perspective of whoever you were playing as. In the first game, you were playing as an unnamed protagonist that was later defined as Point Man, and that's what they call him in this game. And in Fear 2, you were playing as a guy named Sergeant Beckett. Now, the dumb thing about this is that Sergeant Beckett gets a voice in this game, so why is Point Man silent? And you would think, oh, that's not bad. Silent protagonists are a good thing, and I love silent protagonists personally. But this whole game is about Point Man and his brother Paxton Fettel, you know, arguing and having distrust over each other on what to do with Alma, who's their mom. And man, if you've never played the previous games, you're going to be really out of the loop here. But the point is, why have a silent protagonist when you're supposed to be arguing about what to do about the current situation? Paxton Fettel just rants at Point Man, and Point Man just stares at him. There could have been such a great plot development here, where, you know, you open up the main menu and you see the 2 boys in the room. That's Paxton Fettel and Point Man as kids. It would be really cool if they talked to each other and explored this, because the whole game is you kind of exploring your past, but because Point Man is dead silent, it's not fun because you don't know what his motivations are. It's no longer your motivations because you're watching the cutscenes outside of Point Man. The game is about Point Man and Fettel's origin story. So this ain't you. This ain't your decision to make. And even though you're controlling Point Man, you have no idea what he's thinking. Oh my lord. I haven't got to the gameplay yet. So, not even 30 seconds into the game, and I can tell you right now that Fear fans are going to immediately be disappointed. It's just a very different take on the game, and normally that would be a good thing, but they ruined it. And obviously, different developers mean that probably they didn't have the same writers, so they probably had to go back and play the first 2 games and figure out how they're going to make a third game. And they probably had a tight budget too. I don't know. I didn't really research production because it probably would make me more tilted than I am. So, when I played this, growing up, I got it when my brother was home from the Air Force. And so me and him played at the same time because it was a co-op game. And yeah, this screams co-op because when you start the single player, you're in a lobby and it does the launching game countdown timer. So this game's meant to be co-op. I mean, at the end of every level, you get a stat thing. And at the end, it'll say the favorite son. Well, of course you're the favorite son because you're the only one playing. So when me and my brother played this the first time, there's a lot that I missed out on because, well, when you play with another friend, if the game does not do a good job of portraying the horror to 2 people, you're going to miss most of the scares. And as a kid, I didn't really see most of the scares because we were too busy running around and doing stupid stuff. I mean, I could think of other co-op games that did this much better, like the co-op in Dead Space, and I say that kind of cautiously because I'm not a big fan of the co-op in Dead Space, but at least there was moments where, you know, you both were terrified and there was no way of escaping it. So now that I'm playing it again, I got to see some scares, but we're going to get to the first problem with this game before I talk about the core gameplay, is that even in solo, the Fear's really garbage, which is ironic considering the game's called Fear. So there's a lot of just like, you know, spooky shadow running across a doorway, and the orchestra violins playing when something scary appears. And that would be fine, because that's what Fear 1 did, and a little bit of Fear 2. But at the time, you didn't expect anything else. I mean, you didn't really know what was going on. You didn't really know what was happening. So in Fear 3, when you see the little girl Alma run around, you're kind of desensitized to it at this point because you've seen it for 2 games. They should have done something differently, or I don't know, maybe not make a Fear 3, because you see the little girl Alma and you're used to it. You're like, oh, hi, Alma. And you know from the previous games that she is not gonna kill you because you're her son. In this game, Paxton Fettel is with you, who she convinced to kill everybody in the first game. So why are you terrified by some little girl? You're not, because she's not a threat. Oh god, this may seem a little bit of an unstructured review, but there's just so much I hate about this game, so it'd be better just to rant about it. So now the game's not scary. Every time you see Alma, it's just like, oh, what's up, girl? Now there is this demon, which is like a manifestation of like bad memories, and he can be scary, but you know, you see too much of him, so he doesn't become scary after a while. So yeah, a lot of objects fly around, which, to be fair, the first game did that, but the reason it worked in the first game, again, is because you've never seen something like that before, but also because the area was very boring, so seeing something crazy happen just adds to the fear. Let me explain it like this. Fear 1 takes place in cubicles, office buildings, warehouses, very boring everyday places. So when something scary happens, it adds to the effect because you wouldn't expect something like that to happen there. But when you're in like a really scary prison, it's obvious that there's going to be some scares. Or like when you're going through the suburbs and there's demonic stuff all over the place, well yeah, you're kind of tensed up at that point. You're kind of expecting something. It takes away the surprise. You didn't know when the action was going to begin and end in Fear 1. I mean, you could kind of take a guess after a while, but it ain't like the area drastically changed. It was the same. Maybe got a little darker every now and again, but, you know, it's like Fear 3 just kind of gets away from the whole illusion of, oh man, the mystery of when Alma's going to come out and spook you again. And see, in Fear 2, the reason why she's terrifying is because she keeps grabbing you and stuff, and you're just like, what's happening? And every now and again in Fear 3, I'll see where the developers really tried to do some genuine, you know, subtle scares. Like, for example, I went in this bathroom and I turned around and there was a little shadow there, and there was no violins, there was no music, no nothing. That terrified me. Like, here, I'm gonna play it again without me saying something. That actually legitimately caught me off guard. Too bad that never happens. Also, this game tends to be a little bit more on the more fast-paced side. You know, running around, shooting, and trying to find cover. And there's a lot of times where the scares will happen while you're in the midst of fighting. And how I know this is because I'll hear the violin, but I don't see anything. I've missed out on a lot of scary moments. And that's kind of sad, because if they took out the whole violin orchestra thing when a scare's supposed to happen, on multiple playthroughs you would see stuff you hadn't seen before, which would just add to it, right? You'd be like, wait a minute, is this game changing? Or did I not notice that Alma was standing there the whole time? You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I don't know. I guess the gameplay has to redeem itself, right? It kinda sort of does. Fear 1 and 2 had the whole health and health pack thing, and you could carry a lot of weapons. You know, you could carry more than 2. In Fear 3, you can only carry 2 weapons. You do have a normal basic sprint, and there's a cover system. And cover systems, I have nothing against those. You know, cover shooters I have no issues with. I kind of like cover shooters. But when it's implemented poorly, it just sucks. I think the developers intended this game to be a cover-based shooter, which it's a problem when the cover doesn't really work because you can still get shot behind cover fairly often. And there's not a lot of great places to hide behind cover because the enemy will flank you. And I know you say that sounds like a good thing, but you're not dealing with squads anymore. It ain't like in Fear 1 where you'll deal with like 10 enemies at a time. No, you're fighting a whole army that will spawn in or run in from multiple directions. It's really impossible to not take a hit. If it wasn't for the regenerative health, you probably would die a lot more in this game than you do already. And that's another big issue, is that because it's meant to be a co-op game, you can tell that they didn't really dumb down the difficulty for single players because, oh my god, this game is hard. You really won't notice it until you get to Interval 4, and then you realize that, man, it'd really be nice to have a second player to flank some of these hard enemies, or at least, you know, take aggro from when a giant mech plops down. But no, you're left to your own devices. And I love difficult games, but I know that this isn't difficult done well. It's just, let's throw a ton of wave of enemies at the player in a tight, confined spot. Like, look at this part. I'm supposed to hit this button and let the door creep up, which is very tropey and done in a lot of games. Even Valve's sort of guilty for it. And once you get in, you gotta press the button and lower it back down. But the reason this is hard isn't because you're fending off enemies waiting for this door to rise up. It's difficult because you're in a tiny space with a ton of fast-moving enemies that you can't outrun. It's poor game design. I mean, this segment also doesn't make sense because these monsters like teleport through walls, so they can't teleport in this room I'm in to kill me. But whatever. We won't get into the stupid details. And this is like throughout the entire game. There's one moment where you got to take out two big super soldiers who have shields who can like walk into a wall and teleport somewhere else. And there's not really a good place to take cover, especially since them two will flank you often. So what do? You get the riot shield, which is basically this game's easy mode, and it breaks the entire game. If it wasn't for that riot shield on this level, I don't think you could get past this fairly quickly. But okay, the cover system's not that great, and there's waves of enemies that are extremely difficult for no real reason, so at least the gunplay's good, right? Yeah, I give it a pass. Get to see it shine in like the first level. In the first level, you're in a prison, and it's tight, confined. Reminds me of the levels of Fear 1 and 2, which means that you can kind of move from cover to cover. You can play it safe, you can play it fast, and you can really use your weapons really well. I love this level. This is when I thought this game was going to be good, and you know, then it just loses it. And from there on out, you either get really tight spaces with no cover, basically like trapped in a cube with a bunch of enemies, or really long distance maps where enemies are coming from all different angles. It's just crap. I feel like they made this game really, really quickly, really fast, and it shows that it's not the most finished product. And you know what's funny is that like I actually had some footage that corrupted, and it was like a whole level that I don't get to show you. But what's funny is you probably wouldn't tell a difference. I could tell you that, hey, this is level whatever, yeah, and it looks the same as any other level because there's no diversion in gameplay. And I think that's my real big complaint with the first two games, is that it does become repetitive after a while. But in Fear 3, because you're bogged down with all the enemies and gunfights that take forever and the hard difficulty, you begin to grow tired. This game's only like 6 hours long, but it feels like it's 20 hours long because you just got to trudge through just the trash. But the guns feel nice, they work, and I do like the gunplay. I think that's this game's only saving grace, is if you like a good brainless autopilot muscle memory shooter, then this is something you should really check out. And of course it has the slow-mo effect, which has been in all the games, and it's really satisfying to use. And there's no really weak gun. I'm not going to talk about the ending because it's stupid. I'm not going to talk about what they did to my boy Beckett from Fear 2 because it'll just tilt me more. And when you beat the entire game, you can play as Paxton Fettel in single player, and that's cool, I guess. But he's basically easy mode, which is kind of funny. You can save the easy for last, I guess. Shouldn't it be the other way around? Like, could you imagine if you played as Paxton Fettel and then you played as Point Man? You'd be like, wow, this is New Game Plus. Game sucks. Play Fear 1 or 2. But if you really want to play Fear 3, it'll probably go dirt cheap during the Steam Halloween sale. That's guaranteed to come up. So, yeah. Woo! Great way to start off October, baby!